Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Monday night. It is 9:30 p.m. here, Calgary, Alberta. It is Monday, the 10th of May. I am so happy to be here. It is always a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad to be able to do these shows. Like I said in a couple of shows ago, that I had no idea how many shows I'd be doing, and when I first started doing this show back in last November, and it's just been so awesome, the support that I've been receiving, and all the friends that I've made, and people have been tuning in and listening on a regular basis, and I just thank you all so much for being here and for spreading the word and sharing the information that I've been finding on the web, and just getting the word out, regarding child abuse and human rights abuse prevention, really. So that's what this is. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. We're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and we're going to continue on with the topic that we were looking at on Saturday and Sunday morning, and all last week actually, on domestic violence and abuse, and also the effects on children, and some safety plans, and just some good information that I've found just looking on the web. So I'm so glad that you can be here. We left off talking about the dynamics of domestic violence are unhealthy for children. We found that on the Alabama Coalition Against Domestic Violence website at www.acavd.org. And that's a great website. It kind of coincides with the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the NCAVD against DV. And I get my letters mixed up. And it's a great website. They're both awesome websites. They have safety plans on there, how to keep yourself safe here if you're in a domestic violence situation, and your life is being threatened. It is so important for you to get help, and just to realize that there is help out there, and that there's people that you can talk to. There's domestic violence counselors, people out there who are trained and who care, and that's why they're doing the job that they're doing. And there's hotlines out there if you want to remain anonymous. You just don't feel like giving your name out. You can talk to people anonymously and get some help and advice from them. And just make sure that you do reach out and get some help. That's all I can say, because I grew up in a home that was full of domestic violence, and just went on year after year after year after year, and none of my parents didn't get any help. The siblings didn't get any help. None of us got any help, and we just kind of continued on in this dysfunctional abusive home, and so it's just horrible. It's a bad way to live. It's a bad way to grow up. It's a bad way for children to grow up, and so that's why I wanted to continue talking about the effects on children of domestic violence. And this one article that we started looking at, which was Sunday morning, was it's called "Dynamics of Domestic Violence Are Unhealthy for Children," and I'm not sure if that's the title of it, but that's part of the article, and you can pull it up at http://www.acavd.org/children.hotmail.html. It's a great article. It's a short little article, but it covers everything from the emotional effects of domestic violence on children, the behavioral effects of domestic violence on children, the social effects and the physical effects of domestic violence on children, and abuse, right? And so it's so important that we take a look at this. If you have children and you are in a domestic violence situation, you want to know that it will affect them in one way or another, and that you will want to get them some help. And make sure that you do, you have to first of all get yourself to safety, and then get some help for your kids, right? It's so important. That's why the cycle of abuse just continues on and on, because people don't get help, and they just continue on the learned behaviors that they learned from growing up in this environment, these children, right? And then also, the adults, if they don't get help, they continue on in the same cycle of abuse, right? If they were, you might not have been abused as a child, and then end up in a marriage or a relationship that turns very violent and abusive, and this can wear you down, and it can cause all kinds of problems, so a lack of confidence, lack of self-worth, low self-esteem. Even if the abuse is not physical, it does a lot of psychological and mental damage to people, and emotional damage. It's so important to get help and realize that you have every right to a good life that everybody else has, and every right to seek help and get help. It's so important. I never reached out and got any help. I didn't trust counselors, didn't trust therapists, and that was the way that I was brought up. And my parents were told to go to get court-ordered counseling for their marriage problems and the abuse that was going on in the home. And they went to 2 sessions, and then we moved and left the country, and they just did not get any help. So that's the whole thing. And then they later on, after years and years, their whole lives spent in this abusive relationship, they just got used to it. Everybody got used to it, and everybody was just that was just the way of life. That's how life was for us. You know what I mean? So I didn't reach out and get any help. I suffered in silence for many, many years until last fall when I decided to go public with my story. And because I fight for child rights. I stand up for child rights. I'm a part-time student in between courses right now at MRU here in Calgary, and I'm studying child rights, human rights, international community development, and I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and which is just so awesome. It's a volunteer role, and I just love it, and I hope to be able to help stop child abuse and get the word out and continue this fight against child abuse. And so it's so important that we all get involved and do whatever we can, right? So it's not a professional show. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or therapist certificates. I'm just a person who does Blog Talk Radio because I want to get the information out. I think that silence is the issue. It allows the abuse to continue. It allows the abusers to go free. It allows the survivors of abuse to sit and suffer in silence. Silence is a real big problem. It always has been. Anytime you can push abuse under the carpet or hide it behind a closed door, hide it under makeup, hide it from your family and friends, hide it from the government, hide it from the police. If you can hide abuse, then you can get away with it, right? And that's why I'm breaking the silence. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I feel that everybody needs to break the silence, and everybody needs to start talking about child abuse and start talking about domestic violence issues. North America is it's just a plague of child abuse and domestic violence. And kids, we don't even know the real statistics. We just know that, that the statistics that are out there are only based on what is being reported. And that's the same with domestic violence. We know there's so much more going on because there's so much more abuse that is not being reported. So it's just the whole thing. I just want to be one more voice just to keep talking about it, get the information out to people that I'm finding, share a little bit about my own life experiences and what I've seen and been through and dealt with in my own life, and just to be another voice out there just to say we need to stop child abuse and stop domestic violence. And so I'm glad that you can be here. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I tell you, you have to have an adult okay it that you can listen to this show. Reason being is that there is a lot of adult content on here, especially a young child. You want to make sure you have an adult listen with you to make sure that it's okay that you listen to the show. There's a lot of crazy psycho child sexual predators out there. This is what I study. I fight for child rights. I will stand up and defend children in every instance, in every case. And it's my goal to spend the rest of my life doing this. So I can't warn you enough that you need to, I don't know where the Blog Talk players are now, and young people could be listening to these shows, and you need to make sure that you have someone listen to the show with you to say whether it's okay for you to listen to it or not, an adult, somebody older who can make a decision with you, and then if they do decide that you can listen to it, maybe they should listen to it with you, and this way if you have questions, you can ask them, that they can help you find the answers to these questions, right? So we got about 20 minutes. I just say, everyone listen at your own discretion. The topics of abuse are very sensitive. A lot of people are uncomfortable talking about abuse, and a lot of people are uncomfortable hearing about abuse. I've lived with abuse my whole life, so I know I don't have a problem talking about abuse. I know, I was more uncomfortable being abused as a child and a young person than I am talking about it now. So, I have no problems talking about it. But if you have problems listening to subjects of abuse, then you need to turn the show off. You have to ultimately know what's good for you to listen to, and so you need to make that decision and make the right decision for yourself. If you're comfortable with the topics of abuse, by all means, please hang in there and tune in, and I appreciate it. And otherwise, you would not be hurting my feelings if you turned it off, because I know everybody has to be in a safe place when they're listening to this stuff, and if it's going to bother you, you need to turn the show off. So we'll get started here. Dynamics of domestic violence are unhealthy for children. I started this on Sunday morning. We were looking at this article, and they said here, control of family by one dominant member abuse of a parent, isolation, protecting the family secret. Children react to their environment in different ways, and reactions can vary depending on the child's gender and age. Children exposed to family violence are more likely to develop social, emotional, psychological, and/or behavioral problems than those who are not. Recent research indicates that children who witness domestic violence show more anxiety, low self-esteem, depression, anger, and temperament problems than children who do not witness violence in the home. The trauma they experience can show up in emotional, behavioral, social, and physical disturbances that affect their development and can continue into adulthood. So some potential effects are emotional, grief for family and personal losses. We went over this on Sunday. Shame, guilt, and self-blame, confusion about conflicting feelings toward parents, fear of abandonment or expressing emotions, the unknown or personal injury, anger, depression, and feelings of helplessness and powerlessness, and embarrassment. So those are all emotional effects that children might go through, that are unhealthy because of domestic violence in the home and witnessing or being a part of domestic violence in the home. Behavioral potential effects behaviorally are acting out or withdrawing, aggressive or passive behavior, right? Refusing to go to school, caretaking, acting as a parent substitute, right? Lying to avoid confrontation, rigid defenses, excessive attention-seeking, bedwetting and nightmares, out-of-control behavior, reduced intellectual competency, and manipulation, dependency, and mood swings. And those are all behavioral things that can happen to children who are in a home with domestic violence, growing up around domestic violence and abuse. They might either be really aggressive or they might be really passive, right? They might act out or withdraw. They could go either way, right? They might go within themselves and be very passive, or they might start bullying other children or bullying other people around them, just because that's what they learn, that's what they see, sort of thing. Excessive attention-seeking, bedwetting and nightmares, out-of-control behavior, all that stuff, manipulation, dependency, mood swings. It really has an effect on children. Here's some social potential effects. This is where we left off last Sunday. Some potential effects social are isolation from friends and relatives, stormy relationships, difficulty in trusting, especially adults, and poor anger management and problem-solving skills, excessive social involvement to avoid home, passivity with peers or bullying, and engaged in exploitive relationships as perpetrator or victim. And that's, you can see, I even recognize a lot of that in myself, difficulty in trusting, especially adults, poor anger management, and problem-solving skills, right? If they're not learning how to manage their anger because they're growing up and their parents or their caregivers are are fighting all the time. There's a lot of abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, you name it. The children in the home are going to have poor anger management, right? They're gonna copy what the abuser does quite often, right? Especially boys, they have proven that boys that witness their father abusing their mother can go on to abuse their own families when they grow up, because it's a learned behavior. They learned how to take their anger out on their family, and they don't think that there's anything wrong with that. That's the cycle of abuse, right? Because if nobody told them any different, and then they just carry it on into their family, right? And it just continues on until somebody gets some help and stops the cycle, right? Problem-solving skills, that's another big one, because people living in domestic violence situations and who abuse their children generally have extremely poor problem-solving skills, because that's why they're abusing the other person. They either, it's a lack of control, they feel like they need to control this person, so the only way to control them is to overpower them, to abuse them. It could be that there's just a lot of mental problems, substance abuse problems, you name it. Any kind of problem can occur in a family, right? And if they don't get help, the family starts to spin and sort of spiral downwards, right? And the children pick up on this. The children then don't learn how to properly cope. They don't learn how to problem solve, because problem solving is a learned behavior. And if your parents never learned or didn't know how to problem solve and how to teach their children how to problem solve, then they won't know how to do it either. They can't teach themselves that kind of stuff, right? And so that's a huge problem for people who grow up in a domestic violence situation or abusive home. My parents were terrible problem solvers. They couldn't resolve a problem because they could never come together on anything, because it would break out into a fight. So they couldn't even really be in the same room together unless we went out to someone's home. And if we went out to someone's home, then they would cool it until they got back in the car or got back in the house, right? And then it would all start again. And so that the only time of real peace was if we actually got invited over to somebody's house for dinner, let's say, or we went out somewhere in public. Even in public, it was a bit of an issue because both of my parents had no problem on their own with nobody, like no people around that knew them. If we were just at a restaurant by ourselves, had no problem abusing each other at the restaurant, physically and verbally and everything else. So that's the whole issue, right? They had no problem with they had no qualms about just abusing each other wherever they were. And so the only time they would do that is if they were if it was at somebody's house who we knew personally, and they were actually really good friends with them, and they were trying to gain support from them against the other one. See, so my mom was really famous for that, and even my dad, and even today he's still like that. So the kids don't learn anything from that, and they don't learn how to cope with life's difficulties, and because if the parents can't cope, then the kids can't cope. That's all there is to it. Children learn how to cope. It's a learned behavior. And so we, as if you're a survivor of child abuse, there's ways to learn how to cope. I know I'm learning them right now. And it's a hard walk. It's a hard road. I'm learning to not self-sabotage. I'm learning to learn how to trust people. I'm learning how to believe in myself. And it's a lot of work. It's not easy. And you have to really work at it, and you have to recognize what's going on in your life, first of all, to be able to make the changes. So, these kids that come out of these abusive homes, it takes them, it could take them a lifetime to figure this stuff out if they don't get help. So that's the main important thing is, I think everybody, if you can reach out and get help, whether it's an online support group, for adult survivors of child abuse or secondhand domestic violence, or if you're a person who's been in a domestic violence situation firsthand, a partner who's abused you and you were the victim and now a survivor of domestic violence, then you want to make sure you get some help. There are support groups out there for you. I'm sure of it. There's support groups out there for everyone. And so you want to get in touch with people who have been in that situation, because it's such a good support because they know what it's like to have been there. And then they can in turn help you by supporting you and sharing resources and books that they found very helpful, and maybe passing along the word for some good counseling or some good therapists or some good therapy that worked for them. Everybody is different, and everybody needs different things in their healing, But it's just nice to have someone there who knows what you've been through and who can relate to what you're talking about, right? It's so important to do that, to get that help, right? And then there's physical potential effects of domestic violence on children. It says somatic complaints, headaches and stomach aches, nervous, anxious, short attention span, tired and lethargic, frequently ill, poor personal hygiene, regression in development, high-risk play, self-abuse, and that, I had quite a lot of that. I was very nervous as a kid and anxious. I had all kinds of little nervous tics that I would do. And, of course, because these nervous tics were just because of the abuse that was going on in the home and the way that my parents were treating me and the rest of the siblings, I developed these nervous habits. And then, of course, my other people would make fun of them, including family members would tease me about them. But not only that, friends of mine, their parents would tease me about those things. And, of course, that made me feel even worse than I already did because I was being really mistreated at home in every single way, physically, verbally, emotionally, and you name it, sexually. It was all there. And it's very sad when people don't recognize the signs of abuse. Everybody should have spotted it. It was right in front of their face, and it was very, very obvious that there was something wrong. But nobody ever reached out to me and asked me. They would ask me stuff like, "Is everything okay at your home?" But they would never say stuff like, "Is anyone abusing you in your home? Is your mother abusing you? Is your father abusing you? Is your brothers abusing you? Is someone abusing you?" Because I would have probably said yes. That's the whole issue. Nobody even really bothered to ask, and nobody cared, and so the abuse just went on, right? And so that's the whole issue. It's so important to make. I had very poor personal hygiene, wore the same underclothes and underpants for like weeks on end, and it was just really bad. High risk play. I was always involved in high risk play, and doing crazy things, running in front of cars, jumping off of really high things, and just really no regard for life, because I really didn't care if I lived or died, so I really wasn't concerned about trying to stay alive. So I would try to cheat death, you know what I mean? And I did that for years and years and years. And I did a whole lot of drugs from the age of 12 to 21, and I used to do so many drugs that really, I didn't care if I ever kind of came out of it or not. And so that's the whole issue. It does have a huge effect on children. And if you have children and they are growing up in a bad environment, where there's no love and there's no nurturing, and it's just all abuse and name calling, verbal abuse, physical abuse, violence, just a steady barrage, like a war at home, you know that your children will be affected, and that they will need help, right? You cannot just think, oh, they'll be all right, because they won't. And you need to wake up to that fact and make sure that you do get some help and some proper counseling for your children and get them some help. It says here, for parents, giving children love and care. Nurturing children from abusive homes can bring healing to their lives. In giving needed love and care to children, it is important for a parent to reflect these essentials. Let's say, you're the parent who was not the abuser and you've gotten out now. Trust and respect. Acknowledge children's right to have their own feelings, friends, activities, and opinions. Promote independence. Allow for privacy and respect their feelings for the other parent. Believe in them. Provide emotional security. It says talk and act so children feel safe and comfortable expressing themselves. Be gentle. Be dependable. And then provide physical security. Provide healthy food, safe shelter, and appropriate clothing. Teach personal hygiene and nutrition. Monitor safety. Maintain a family routine. Attend to wounds. Provide discipline. Be consistent. Ensure that rules are appropriate to age and development of the child. Be clear about limits and expectations. Use discipline to give instruction, not to punish, right? Not to lash out at your child and hurt them, right? It says give time. Participate in your children's lives, in their activities, school, sports, special events, celebrations, and friends. Include your children in your activities and reveal who you are to your children. And encourage and support. Be affirming. Encourage children to follow their interests. Let children disagree with you. Recognize improvement. Teach new skills. Let them make mistakes. And give affection. Express verbal and physical affection. Be affectionate when your children are physically or emotionally hurt. And care for yourself. Give yourself personal time. Keep yourself healthy. Maintain friendships. Accept love. So that's how we can give children love and care. And I tell you, I didn't have hardly any of that growing up. There was no encouragement. There was no love. I was not allowed to disagree with my parents, and I was beaten if I did. And if I even raised opened my mouth, my mom would hit me. I wasn't even allowed to open my mouth, as a matter of fact. I wasn't allowed to say anything. Even if I was going to say I love you, I would still get hit because I was opening my mouth, you know what I mean? So there was no respect in our home, for a lot of the children in that home. And, that was just not a way to bring up children. You know what I mean? It's just not. Like, it's a bad way to grow up. And, there was no verbal affection or nice physical affection. There was no help. Like, if, after we would be beaten, we were just told to go away. And then if we opened our mouth about anything at all, then we were threatened that it would happen again. You know what I mean? And so it was always just threats and violence and just a miserable existence. And that's why I wanted to die. And I really did feel like I was dead. And, a lot of people wouldn't know that, but it's the truth. And so a lot of my friends growing up knew that because I would talk to them about lots of stuff. And, we all felt kind of the same because we grew up the same. But, there was no... It was a really bad way to grow up, and there was 7 siblings in that home, and my parents started out from the very, the first few on down to me, and just made our lives miserable, made it a living hell for us, right? And so, you don't want to do that to your children. You want to give them love, and you want to show them that you care and respect them, and by respecting them, and they will show you respect, and by loving them, they will love you. You know what I mean? It comes back to you, right? What you do to your children, they will do to you. And everybody has a time they might rebel a little bit, but as long as they know that you're there for them, and that you will do anything that you can to help them, and that you are backing them up 100%, and that you want the best for them, eventually they come around, right? It's so important to be there for your children at all times, and not just when they're behaving, also when they're not behaving, and to let them know that they are going to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's to learn from those mistakes, and not beat on your children and hurt them because they do something wrong, or you think they've done something wrong. It's so important, right? So important. We cannot stress this enough. Safety is for children too. A child's own safety plan. You can actually create a safety plan for your own child. It says child victim right on this website here, this Alabama Coalition Against Domestic Violence. They have a little link, and you can click on it, and you can get your child's own safety plan, just in case, because you need to have a safety plan too. If you are a victim of abuse, domestic violence, whether you're a man, a woman, it doesn't matter. If you're a victim of domestic violence, you need to have a safety plan. And you need to know how to keep yourself safe. There's definite rules to that. You have to be really careful how you go about doing it. And you can get this information. I've got safety plans that you can find are at www.ncadv.org, and that's the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, right? And it's called Protect Yourself. Safety plan, right? You can get your own safety plan, and you can get one also at www.domesticviolence.org, and there's some great safety plans on there as well. And these safety plans are so easy, but they just give you some tips, For instance, like if you're still in the relationship, think of a safe place to go if an argument occurs. Avoid rooms with no exits, like the bathroom, or rooms with weapons, for instance, the kitchen. Think about and make a list of safe people to contact. Keep change with you at all times. That's for like coin phones if you still have coin phones in your area. This is probably kind of old, but you want to memorize all important numbers. Establish a code word or sign so that family and friends and teachers, coworkers know when to call for help, right? Think about what you will say to your partner if he or she becomes violent. And remember, you have the right to live without fear, right? It says if you've left the relationship and you're out of the home, right? It says change your phone number, screen your calls, save and document all contacts, messages, injuries, and other incidents involving the batterer, right? Change locks if the batterer has a key. Avoid staying alone. Plan how to get away if confronted by an abusive partner. If you have to meet your partner, do it in a public place. Vary your routine. Notify school and work contacts. Call a shelter for battered women. If you leave the relationship or are thinking of leaving, you should take important papers and documents with you to enable you to apply for benefits or take legal action. Important papers you should take include Social Security cards, birth certificates, your marriage license, leases and deeds in your name and your partner's name, right? Your checkbook, your charge cards, bank statements, charge account statements, insurance policies, proof of income for you and your spouse, pay stubs, W-2s, any documentation of past incidences of abuse, police reports, photos, medical records, etc. So important that you have that stuff right before you leave the home, because you don't want the other partner to get a hold of it and destroy it. It's really hard to get that stuff back sometimes, and it takes a long time, and it takes money, and to get a lot of that stuff back. It costs money, and it's a real problem. It's a real hassle. So if you have all that stuff ready, or even copies of it made, and then put the originals back and give the copies to someone, at least you have that, right? And keep the phone numbers memorized in your head. You don't want a bunch of people's phone numbers written down in a wallet, and then or in your purse, and then at the for emergencies, and then your abusive partner finds it, and then there's more abuse because they found a bunch of numbers in your purse. You want to remember this stuff, right? You want to memorize it and have it first place in your head, and that way you can, if your life is being threatened or you're in danger, you can make those phone calls that you need to make. If you can't call 911 because they can see what you're dialing, you can call your buddy who is set up to know that if you phone and you say a certain word, then they will phone 911 for you, and then you can get some help, right? It's so important to save your life. You can save your life. You can save your children's lives by knowing how to keep yourself safe, how to get a safety plan, and make sure that you keep reaching out and getting some help. It's so important. So we have about a minute left, and we'll continue on with this on Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, same time. And I thank you so much for being here, and I just hope that, if you're in this situation, you will reach out and get help. And you can check our website out. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. That's http://dreamcatchersforAbusedChildren.com. And we have all kinds of great information on there regarding child abuse, signs and symptoms, links and references to everything. I mean, that is such a great resource for anyone who is suffering with, or who has suffered in an abusive situation, whether it's domestic violence, whether you're a parent and you're having a hard time coping and you're not sure if you're abusing your child or not, and you think maybe it is abuse, maybe I better check it out because I don't want to hurt my children. There's links on there for parents. There's links on there for everyone to get some information and get some help, right? Resources and links and daily, it's updated daily. So you do want to check that out, http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. Make sure you check out Donna Shear and myself will be on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio tomorrow night, and that's on Blog Talk Radio at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And Donna Shear, she's the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She's hosting the show, and I'll be there as co-host, and I'm just so happy about that. I love to do the show. Tonight I did one with Elizabeth Brawley hosting, and Elizabeth Brawley is the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and it was just awesome. So I hope that you can tune in. We're on every single night, Monday through Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for an hour, and we all different hosts. Tammy Tanko. She's also she actually has almost the whole Western United States. She's the pretty much the whole Western United States and Northern United States, parts of it, regional director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And Donna Shear, Tammy Tanko, Elizabeth Brawley, and myself will be doing these shows Monday through Friday. So you want to make sure you tune in and get some information. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions and comments, let us know. And you're welcome to join us on the show live. You can phone in and be part of the show. So thanks, everybody. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves until next time. And I'll be on tomorrow morning with One Child Abuse Survivor to Another at 6 o'clock in the morning, Mountain Standard Time. And until then, just take care, and you guys are in my heart. I love you all so much. Have a good night. Bye-bye.